Boom! Welcome to Interview Combat. I am GM Jim, and I am here today with Ryan Doyle from Verdigris Table. This is Interview Combat. That's what happens when you have no Thank you. No VFX budget. It's just I would have graphics here. Lots of explosions,
boom. Insert
swords
graphics.
clashing, swords against shields. Hey Ryan, why don't you tell us about yourself?
My name is Ryan Doyle. I have a YouTube channel called The Verdigris Table where I help particularly new dungeon masters get into Dungeons and Dragons. We branched out from there and into more like advanced topics. But yeah, I'm excited to roll some dice and answer some questions and provide more sound effects.
Excellent. I'm counting on you for sound effects as we go along. But yeah, speaking of that, so this is Interview Combat, and if you haven't seen it before, this is an interview show, but it's not your grandpappy's interview show. What we're doing here is we are going to roll contested D20 checks, and if I win, Ryan gets a hard question, and if Ryan wins, he gets a softball question, and he gets a counter spell if he doesn't like it. So we'll see what goes on there. First of all, how many years have you been YouTubing?
I looked this up, and the answer is 3, or I'm in my third
Three?
year. I've got two full years
Okay.
under my belt. This is year 3.
So when we roll our D20s, I will be rolling flat, and Ryan will get a +3 to his rolls. All right. So are you ready to go?
I am ready to go. I wanted on record that I was offered silvery barbs and I refused to use it. Let the record show. All right. Do you want me to put? I'm putting a +3 on this bad boy. Let's see if that.
All
works.
right. All right. Your 14 beats my 7.
Cheers.
So here is your first question. What makes a good tabletop role-playing game GM?
Ooh. I don't think there's one simple answer to that. I think I've been talking about that for about 3 years now, and I'm barely feel like I scratched the surface. But I think remembering that it's a game and focusing on the fun at the table, and that's going to mean different things for different people with different player bases. And your fun is part of that equation too. So, like, my style of running a game is going to be different than your style of running a game, and the kind of game I run for my Tuesday night crowd is different than my Wednesday night crowd. We're there to have a good time, and there's a lot of other cool stuff we can be doing at the same time. But if we take our eyes off the fun, things can start to drag a bit.
All right, well said. Let's go again.
Okay.
Here comes my D20 at you. Boom, you need to beat, a 14.
All right. Didn't do it. Didn't do it.
Not with your total of 5.
Let's do the hard
Here
stuff.
comes the hard-hitting journalism, Ryan.
All right.
How do you approach inclusivity and representation in your content and the games you play?
It's interesting. So I've been lucky enough to have a fairly diverse cast of players, depending on how you measure inclusivity there, but race, gender, neurodivergence, orientation. I've had the benefit of playing with and learning from a lot of different kinds of people. From the content side of view, it's hard because I am just me, right? So like I am the vanilla white dude who plays D&D, but I try to have a fairly broad perspective of like there's a lot of advice out there that's like this is the way to do things, and I try to keep an eye on the fact that like everybody's built different. People have different preferences. I myself prefer variety in my games. So like I try not to espouse the one true way of doing things. I think my takes would be spicier and my channel might be better as far as the numbers go if I did, plant my flag on a hill and yell about things more often. But here we are.
It's funny that you say about the one right way to do things. I was just thinking the other day that my channel is essentially turning into a whole crusade against that type of person. You know, that
Mm,
there are those people out there that say if you are not doing X, then you are not truly playing Y.
yes.
And that is, you know, the people who say you must have this or it's not D&D, or if you're not doing this then it's not OSR. And my whole thing is take rules from different systems, mix them together, do whatever's fun at your table, and anyone who tells you different is just angry and bitter for no good reason. So
Hmm.
I've become a have fun the way you want to crusader.
Yeah, and I mean I love that. That's part of the reason I reached out, man. Yeah, I love the vibes.
Excellent. Well, let's go again. Dun dun dun. You need to beat only a 4.
Oh, I got this. I got this. When I put my
So
3
you
on it.
got that
Yeah, got you.
for a total of 11. This is fun. Do you have a favorite tabletop monster?
Do I have a favorite tabletop monster? Um, I think there's two answers to that. I think mechanically, in a especially in like a fifth edition is what I'm playing now, but even like a Pathfinder or like whatever, more OSR, old school BXE kind of game, I like monsters that do more than eat hit points. I like a monster like a rust monster. I'm always gonna throw out there early. Like I like a monster that goes after the character sheet in other columns, like a shadow sapping your strength or I don't know, diseases, lingering injuries, stuff like that. Stuff that the stakes are higher, because especially in a fifth edition context, it's like I lost hit points, but I have a billion, and I'm going to take a nap and get them all back in a second anyway. So I like a monster that mechanically does other stuff. I mean, thematically, I think dragons get short shrift, which is ridiculous. So yeah, flying, intelligent, plotting, with an army of humanoids at their back. Like, yeah, I like dragons. There's always a dragon on my random roll table. I don't care what level you are. It's gonna fly out of the sky and steal your milk money if you roll. Snake eyes usually.
Yeah, I 100% agree that Rust Monster might be the most terrifying creature in Dungeons and Dragons. It's the I like my stuff.
That's it.
I don't want you to eat my stuff.
That's it. And the look in the eye when they like realize that, oh, this thing can touch my stuff, right? Like, I've got this fight. It's like, oh, well, that sword's a -1 sword. I didn't know -1 was a thing. Oh, yep. Hit it
It
again.
is now.
See what happens.
Indeed. All right. Well said. We're burning through some questions here. Ready to go again?
Roll off. I can't forget my 3.
Oh, my 10
Ooh.
beats your
Ooh. Just.
9. Take that. Um, all right, back with more hard-hitting journalism then. Here we go.
Mhm.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions or stereotypes about TTRPGs that you aim to address and debunk through your videos?
Well, we talked about like the one true way fallacy. So I'll put that on the shelf for a second. I think that you have to pick a lane. I think we're in. I mean, one, we're on the internet talking about things, so right away it's combative. um, but two, I think TTRPGs are a very nerd centric hobby area, and we like to categorize things, and you see a lot of pressure of like choose your genre and die on that hill, and like, are you OSR or no, it's new SR, and it's like talking about obscure bands and like micro genres. And again, my personal preference is variety. So I want a social game in town where we don't touch the dice for a day, and then I want like all combat all the time where everyone's about to die, and then I want a hex crawl. I don't think you have to choose one, and I think it's actually you're doing yourself a disservice by deciding that this is your favorite and only thing, right? Like, you don't do that with
Hmm.
meals. You don't do that, well, maybe you do, I guess, but yeah, play lots of different games and like read lots of different games even if you're not playing them. Get ideas from everywhere.
Nice. Well said. I am going to turn off this. Where'd you go, banners? Oh, there you are, banner. I'm going to turn off this banner because give us a little more screen real estate, and people might be getting annoyed by the constant scrolling at the bottom there.
We know where we are.
We know where we are. There will be links to Ryan's stuff down in the description, and somewhere floating up here, there'll be a card. If you just look on your screen right now, you'll see it. Obviously, you know where it is because you can see it. Cards. Nice. All right, well, let's go again. Dun, 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 more combat. You need to beat, a 15.
15.
12 or higher on the die.
Oh, almost 16.
Again, you just like this hard-hitting journalism, it seems like. The dice are leading you into the tough questions.
Interview combat is my dump stat, apparently.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, here we go. TTRPGs often involve complex moral and ethical dilemmas. Can you share a time when your in-game decisions or those of your players raised difficult questions about right and wrong?
That's interesting. So I can think of a bunch of times. What jumps to mind right now, I'm basically running an evil campaign, which I didn't mean to, but everybody showed up with the character that was like, my guy's kind of a jerk. It's like, oh, my guy's kind of a jerk. So we've been leaning into that, and it does make the, whatever adventure you're running assumes that the characters are relatively good guys. They're going to act like heroes. So it does up the challenge on the game master side a bit to finesse things. It's like, well, the world's going to end, so it doesn't matter. Like, if everybody dies, you can't steal from anybody anymore. Early in my game master career, I decided I wanted more of that spicy moral ambiguity, and I added a room in the dungeon that they've been like, hacking and slashing their way through for a couple levels, smashing through goblins. This room was all of the children. And my players were relatively new, and they were like, oh, where are your parents? It's like, I don't know. We heard some terrible noises. It's like, you orphaned them. Now what? And they hated it so much. It was not fun at all, because there is this assumption going into it that we're like, okay, unpacking right now, but like vanilla default, unless we say otherwise, it's like, these are evil monster things that you get to kill without feeling weird about it. And if I change that agreement with you in the middle of our narrative flow, it's not good for anybody. So they did the right thing, and they adopted the goblins. They brought them back to town. One of them actually became like a player character down the line. But if you're gonna have moral ambiguity, do it. Telegraph it. It's the same you would danger before initiative is rolled and everybody's dead. And now they realize that was a decision they made, even though that was the default setting for the last 100 times we've rolled initiative.
Yeah, I am. My novels are noir fiction, so I love that moral grayness. That's where my characters live. My protagonists in my books are all very morally gray, and that's how I like to run my D&D too. In my current my home group in the current campaign, they just ran into a situation where they found out that they met a drow elf who told them the story about how the drow had been living in this forest with regular elves, and the elves all ganged up and bullied the drow and kicked them out of the forest. And they killed a bunch of the drow, and the drow were like, oh, we're so disenfranchised now, everything's terrible for us. And they had the drow were gathering at this fort to take back their homeland. And so my players were all like, yes, we should help these drow. What happened to them was not right. And then I let them learn that in order to occupy this fort, the drow had slaughtered all of the humans that lived there. And then they were like, oh, I guess these drow aren't that sympathetic as we thought. And so then it was, great moral quandary. They didn't know what to do. So they went to somewhere else and did a different quest. So they were like, that's maybe a little too much for us to handle right now. We need to think about that one.
That's the thing. It feels bad when I'm reading noir. Like, I know the tone out of the gate. Like, I know what I'm signing up for. The whole like Yeah, but I do that all the time. I love that. And like the way to do that is factions, right? It's not like here's the good guys, here's the bad guys. It's like here's a bunch of guys. Pick a side
Yeah.
or screw everybody. I don't,
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as you make sure that your players get to meet someone from each faction, who each person who has a story and a reason, because nobody thinks they're the villain of their own story, right?
Exactly.
Everybody thinks they're the hero.
Exactly.
And so,
yeah. And that's
yeah,
your favorite
100%.
campaign or fiction, like whatever story where you're telling the bad guy who like, well, wait, hold on, he has a point here. That's always a way more interesting story.
Absolutely. So let's go again. You need to beat. Oh my goodness.
Ooh, he's rolling hot. 13's not going to do it.
All right. Let me find one that feels a little bit different here. We're honestly running out of hard questions.
I'm sorry you expected me to be a better roller. Hold on, I'm gonna change my dice. Hold on.
Yeah, it's definitely the dice. All right, here we go. This is a sort of different topic here. Do you fudge dice rolls? Really, you can tell me.
I wish I could. Very, very rarely. So I have not used a Dungeon Master screen in years. So I like rolling out in the open because it kind of, one, it shows the players I'm not fudging at all. I'm not making decisions. The dice are doing this, not me. I'm going to play the monsters as hard as I can, but you see where the decision's getting made, and I could come around to this side of the table and talk strategy, and it's much more cooperative. We did a Pathfinder 2e campaign in the dark times of the OGL crisis, and they have a lot of secret roles, which I've done in the past, but it's like codified. So once in a while, I started doing like contested social roles. Those I'll fudge, because if a player makes a very compelling argument, you probably shouldn't roll the dice in the first place. But they invested in charisma instead of their decks, so they want to roll dice because rolling dice is fun. So I've started treating those as contested, and once in a while, I will fudge that in a situation where the dice didn't matter in the first place. Like I've already decided in my head what should happen. I won't do that in a combat, but even so, that happened fairly recently, and I gave my buddy advantage because all his ducks were in a row, negotiating with the Banshee, made his great case, had support, speaking in the correct language. He rolled a 1 and a 2. It's like, no, I can't touch. There's nothing I can do about that. You're done. You can come back tomorrow if you want to, but she's not buying it.
Yeah, the last in-person campaign I ran, I had a DM screen, but my players were all new players. And so when I would roll, they would just kind of look over the DM screen anyway. They didn't know any better. They were just like, what'd you roll? And so I just had to get rid of the DM screen because I was like, they're just going to look anyway.
Yeah, it's liberating. You do lose a little of the theatricality of the DM screen. Like it does more than just allow you to fudge.
Yeah, I've heard the stories about Gary Gygax running games with like a several foot tall DM screen where he was like the Wizard of Oz behind the big thing.
It was like a curtain. It was one of those like room dividers. And it was the 70s, so I see in my mind's eye, it's like, it's not cool. It's like painted with like, Japanese inspired like swans or something.
Or it's paisley.
It was, exactly. It was just down in the basement because they weren't using it anymore.
Well, they're having to dig their dice deep within the shag rug when they fall off the table. There's something else I was going to say, but I can't remember because I was thinking about shag rugs.
It happens to me all the time.
Thinking about shag rugs? Yeah. Always on my mind. No, what I was going to say is that I do a lot of my rolling in front of my players, but there are some things that I always roll in secret. That'll be things like enemy insight or perception checks, because I feel like that it ruins the mystique if the players know that the enemy rolled a 17 or a 3 on their insight. You know what I mean?
Yes. I'll use the dice to let me know like what's happening, right? Like they you they left their let's call them retainers. They were strong-armed goblins, but they left their retainers unconscious in a room with the donkey, and they woke up and no one was around. So it's like, all right, what these goblins are gonna what made a morale check essentially, and sure enough, they were gone. But like I did that myself because they didn't even know that was happening. And sometimes I'll do stuff like that in prep too. Be like, okay, what happened while the camera was off of these guys? So yeah, like random encounters and like stuff the player shouldn't know everything. So sometimes I roll by myself. And the cool thing about circling back to the Pathfinder secret rolls for a second, stealth. I roll stealth. Like I don't love taking the dice away from the player's hands, but like I don't care how good you are at like not metagaming. It's better if you don't know if you're hidden or not, right? I rolled a 2. I know my butt's sticking out. I'm going to make, even subconsciously, I'm going to make different decisions where it's just like your character did their best to hide. You have an awareness that you're good at hiding. You don't know how, it's not just you don't know the passive perception, like you don't know how well that just went until the consequences of it become clear to you. So yeah, stuff like that. I've been trying to think of like building a Dungeon Master screen that has like a dice tower coming out the front of it so the player can roll the die, but I can see the result one day.
I have seen those kinds of dice tower, like a dual dice tower with a break in the middle that has, you can roll down the public side or the private side. I feel like I've seen that before.
I got a buddy with a 3D printer. I'm going to reach out and be like, hey man.
I think that would be cool. It's like public, private, and you just drop it down the different one. That if that doesn't exist, then TM, we own that now.
Dibs.
Oh, he said dibs first. Damn.
That's how that works, right?
I think that's how copyright law
Dear
works.
Patent Office, dibs.
I totally called dibs. All right. Maybe we got time for a couple more questions here.
Nice. I got to redeem myself.
Again, let's see. Should be easy. Here you go. Well done. Destroyed me with your 19 to my 2. Here you go. There's a little chance for you to promote yourself. What do you believe sets your TTRPG YouTube channel apart from others in the community? What unique perspective? Go ahead.
I'm going to take this opportunity to promote myself, but I rolled the 2 and you rolled the 16.
Wait. Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. Well, I already asked the question, so was my DM mistake.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, you fudged.
No, go ahead, please. I totally fudged there. Yeah, and I got caught.
I'm sorry. What was the question? What makes the Verdigris table different? I think a lot of the content I try really hard to get back to the beginner mindset because one, there's not a ton of on-ramps where you're like, it's a complex beast and there's a whole set of like assumptions. Most tabletop role-playing games assumed you've already played tabletop role-playing games. So I try very hard to be educational and accessible, and in the process, from that beginner mindset, like pull lessons out that are good for more experienced game masters, right? Like there's definitely a benefit to getting back to fundamentals, starting back from ground zero, like kind of clearing your cache and your assumptions and like, okay, why is this doing this here? And how can I take this and translate it into the rest of my game master career? So I like to think I excel at that. I try hard to do that. I think it works. People seem to like it. Yeah, so I think that's one thing that sets apart my channel. Yeah.
Your Fandolin views were killing it. You had one, I think, of like 99,000 views on your How to Run LMOP.
Yes, if you know who I am, it's probably because of that. I like doing the starter sets and getting to that beginner mindset. I did the Essentials kit, I did the Pathfinder starter set, I'm just doing the new starter set now. I was going to do that about a year or so ago, but for reasons we won't get into, I didn't. Yeah, and then the other side, like the reason it's called the Verdigris table, other than like we played around a copper verdigris colored table back in the day. Is I love tables. Like my next big push is going to be, people talk about immersion, right? But like emergent is my thing, and I think it's one and the same. They complement each other. So like I like it when my world and my NPCs and my characters like start doing things. So I use a lot of random roll tables to I build encounters that are interconnected. I think random encounters get a bad rap because most people do them poorly, but I love it when it's just like that's half the reason I roll in the open too. It's like this is what happened. I am not carefully curating a story for my players because you get to weird like puppet master ego zones with that real quick. We're watching the story unfold, and you pulled that dragon. The dice said the dragon's around today, and now are you going to be polite or are you going to be a jerk? Like now the interaction is what drives the narrative versus like 1d6 goblins, boring. 1d6 goblins who are like coming back from the woods with a giant boar between them, who are half drunk from celebrating. Are we going to talk? Are we going to run away? Are we going to follow them back to their camp? That's the interesting part to me. That's a little more advanced from the game master side of things because you need to have a little more more moves. But at the same time, I think it actually frees you up to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like we're gonna find out together. And like at least for me, there's no one right way to play. But like for me, that's where like the juice is, where like things are happening organically.
So that I'm going to break the format here because it's my show and I can do that. But based on your answer, I want to ask you a follow-up question. You answered it sort of you gave us some teases in your last answer, but if most people run random encounters wrong, how do you properly run a random encounter?
Interconnectedness, like relevance, and I think like one more step of development. A lot of random encounter tables, it's at 1d6 goblins. Boring. But okay, my random encounter table, so come buy them on the DM's Guild or get them for free because the whole thing's in the preview. But the way I make random encounters is here's a region, right? You're going to go through this forest, and like the starting town's on one side of the forest, the dungeon is in the forest or on the other side of the forest. And I use 2d6 because you get a nice little bell curve. It's not quite as random. So I can put a dragon because the odds are you're not going to roll snake eyes, and if you do, baby, you earned it. It's not a 1 on a d20. It's much less likely to happen and therefore much more significant. But there's goblins in these woods. D6 goblins, boring. Here's 7, 8 likely to happen. Here's signs of their campfire. Right now, I'm broadcasting information. Do I interact with that? Do I just put that in the bank? Do I ignore it and keep walking to the dungeon? Here's a traveling peddler who just got robbed by those goblins. Here's the goblin village. Here's like varying degrees of like encounter difficulties based on what you rolled of like what the goblins are doing. So yeah, and there's potential for the players to interact with them, and they can go like, okay, you find one goblin stumbling around lost in the woods, you talk to them, and now here's this moral ambiguity of like, here's a faction, they're just living their lives, but like they're also poaching sheep from the people you like. But if we're clever, we can use them against the kobolds in the dungeon that we're trying to clear out right now. So again, not defaulting to combat, I think, is a huge one. Because D6 goblins is like, okay, that's a fight, but the fight's built in. you don't have to do any work for combat. The work goes into like, okay, how else can I make this interesting? And it kind of circles back to what you were saying before about like the goblins don't know that they're just sitting around waiting for heroes to come kill them. They have an agenda. They have wants and desires, and that's the part that you as the game master can think about. And now you've built that's world building, right? That your players are going to interact with. It's not the continent scale map and the pantheon and what happens 8,000 years ago at the dawn of time. It's like, no, what are these goblins up to? Why are they getting drunk right now? Oh, it's the goblin holiday. What does that look like? That's interesting. That's something that the players are going to interact with, and it's going to cause story to happen. It's going to cause sparks. potential energy.
I love that you said interconnected, because that's how I look at random encounters. In my current campaign, there's a lot of overland travel, and so when I do random encounters, they're random in when they happen, but they're not random in that they happen.
Right.
If that makes sense. It's like what thing the players are doing is they stole something, or they came upon a very powerful thing, and the bad guy wants it. The bad guy knows they have it. So whenever they hit that number on the random encounter, the encounter is the bad guy's agents coming to get the thing. So there's nothing random from a story perspective about the encounter happening.
Yeah.
But they just don't know when or if it's going to happen anytime they go from one town to another.
Yeah, and I think random is maybe the problem. Problem's too strong of a word for it, but I think random is the point of confusion, where it's like this is a quantum encounter, right? It exists in a waveform of potential right now, but it is
getting deep.
Random is the sorry. Let me talk long enough, and that's where I'll go. Random generation doesn't mean random, like the opposite of relevant. Because the other side, I mean, the reason like I put so much effort into making these systems for myself is like, you wandered 4 days through the wilderness in this fantastical, wonderful environment with monsters and danger, and it was boring. Like nothing happened. Oh, something did happen, and that's worse for the story, and it's just a waste of time. It's like, no, something, this part needs fixing. So yeah, I will send you my, I just have tier 1 like polished, like fit for public consumption, but after this I will send you my tables. Be happy to share.
Absolutely. Killer. Well, we're at the 30-minute mark, so I think I've put you through enough punishment.
That was great. It was great. I'm glad I rolled terribly, because sometimes losing is more fun than winning, players out there.
I think we had some excellent discussions there. I'm going to put that little thing back up there. So Ryan Doyle, Verdigris table, youtube.com/r.doyle, and the links will be down below in the thing. There might be another card up here if I haven't used up all my card allowance from YouTube in this video yet. We'll see. But thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you later.
Thanks. Had a blast.